Thanks for joining us. You're watching Notepad. I'm your host Ibrahim Sani. There's plenty to cover as this is the first episode of a very busy week for everybody. We'll break this episode on two fronts. The first is on the ongoings of corporate Malaysia. When it comes to that, that's always an interesting thing to look at. But the second idea is, of course, looking at the day-to-day growth rate of positive COVID-19 positive cases. We'll start off with the big whammy, I suppose, which is the reappointment of Tan Sri Wahid back into the administration. Why I say reappointment was because he was a big feature in the previous administration. He was, of course, the chairman of PNB. That was the last portfolio that he held in assisting the previous administration. When I say previous, I didn't mean Pakatan Harapan. I'm talking about Barisan Nasional. Tan Sri Wahid, of course, brings on a very full force of goodwill, I suppose, from corporate Malaysia. However, his appointment did not bring about interesting reactions from the public. Very quickly, I did a particular poll on Twitter. Here, I can just pull this up. It shows that 1 in 3 of Malaysians do not support him. Only support him. 2 in 3 of Malaysians actually do not support him. We're talking about 65.5% of netizens not supporting his reappointment. I can understand where the frustration comes from. It's not because of his incompetence or his inability to do what is needed, but because of his allegiance with Datuk Sri Najib, the previous administration, as well as many others that is surrounding that particular episode. Now, that is, of course, doesn't diminish the fact that he has what it takes to get the job done. And what is it that is being asked of him for this particular round? It is, of course, trying to revitalize the equities sector of Malaysia and to reimburse the, prop up the capital markets per se. Second half of this particular show, we'll talk about the Securities Commission and what they need to do and what they intend to do for the capital markets of Malaysia. But for now, let's take a look into the dismissal of 2 directors of Bursa Malaysia, which I would presume to be also quite scandalous because they are deemed to have conflict of interest. A lot of questions bag around that issue. For instance, were they not aware of the conflict of interest upon hiring of these 2 directors? But that's, passé, I suppose. Today they have been deemed as having a conflict of interest. They have been dismissed, and in replacement of these 2 directors, now comes Tan Sri Wahid. So again, Tan Sri Wahid, because of his association of the previous government, not much goodwill, but he does have what it takes to do the necessary in terms of propping up, in particular, the equities sector of Malaysia, which we have seen dropping. That's the big deal, or that's the big news that happened late last week. What's going to happen from this week onwards remains to be seen, because his appointment is going to take place on 1st May. So we do expect Tan Sri Wahid to keep his lips quite shut about what he intends to do from now until 1st of May. Even then, knowing Tan Sri Wahid, he's still going to ensure that he has his footings first before he starts to speak to the media. We ran this particular article on AWANI where he directly spoke to us, AWANI. When I reached out to him personally, he did say, or he did respond personally to me. We carried his quote on that particular article, so you can have a look there as well. Mostly it's about talking of his appreciation and gratitude towards the administration in naming, in fact, Tengku Zafrul in person for this appointment. There seems to be an interesting dynamic, because if you remember, when Tan Sri Wahid was the group CEO of Maybank, Tengku Zafrul was the IB CEO and Tengku Zafrul was reporting to him. Today is the other way around. Tan Sri Wahid reports to Tengku Zafrul by virtue of Tengku Zafrul being the FinMin there, of Finance Minister. A little bit of corporate history going on there. But anyway, let's also talk about the petrol price. It seems like we've hit the floor price when RON 95 is currently being sold at RM1.25 per litre. This price is the same price as last week's price. And if I can just pull up this particular graphics, it shows of the week-on-week price reduction of RON 95. And it has gradually gone down until 2 weeks in a row at 125. It was 125 last week. It's going to be 125 this week. This shows that there is some indicator that this government is having some form of floor price, and that floor price seems to be 125. So expect that 125 to be hovering around this price moving forward. Why is it going to be 125 still for next week? That's my prediction. You know why? Because of this graphic that I want to pull up. It shows some selected commodity prices. This data, of course, is presented by DOSM, or the Department of Statistics Malaysia. It shows that oil price, palm oil, rubber, all on a downward trend. Now, when you have oil on a downward trend, when you have palm oil all on a downward trend, as well as rubber on a downward trend, you're going to expect commodities to be trading quite aggressively. Why? Because prices are cheap. There's going to be a lot of punters out there. There's going to be a lot of people that want to buy commodities, or at least buy the futures of these commodities moving forward. So we're going to see some vibrancy in terms of the futures market when it comes to commodities. Worthy of note, the price or the oil tussle price between Russia and Saudi Arabia seems to have found its conclusion, largely because of Saudi Arabia and Russia reportedly having agreed to cut production rates to ensure that oil prices continue to hover above what is trending right now, which is about $30 per barrel. Hopefully the price will be pushed up. Why I say hopefully is because low oil prices doesn't help anybody. It harms even Malaysia. Malaysia is indeed an oil exporter. It is going to harm Petronas income moving forward. So I do want to see the oil prices creep up a little bit more. Worthy of note also, Petronas has just done a very successful bond placement with an oversubscription of 37 billion US dollars on their $6 billion denominated bond issuance. This is, of course, one of the largest bond issuer bond take up by any Asian issuer. So that's also important to note. Of course, they have been rated as A2 by Moody's and Fitch as well, and many others. So you see the bond take up actually picking up. There's a lot of investors wanting to take these notes, 10-year note, 25-year note, many others. So congratulations to Petronas for a very successful bond issuance. This is their first issuance since 2015, if I recall. So yes, plenty of capital means plenty of activities. Plenty of activities for Petronas means plenty of SME activities that support the Petronas industries moving forward. So yes, plenty of things that can happen from Petronas for this year. We just want that oil prices to go up so that Petronas can get at least a little bit more income and revenue from that particular commodity. And finally, let's talk about the COVID-19 movement. Now, I want to focus on this graphic right here. This graphic shows day-to-day growth projection of COVID-19 if the day-to-day growth rate is trending at 1% versus 3% versus 5% versus 7%. If we are growing where we are at now, which is day-to-day 1%, it means that active cases from today until 1 month from now, it's not going to be much difference, yeah? Because today active cases hovers around 2,000 active cases. If day-to-day growth rate is at 1%, that means 1 month from now, active cases is going to be about 3,000. This is the best that we can hope for because we can't really expect day-to-day growth to be 0%. Why? Because there's no vaccine and people are not compliant. MCO phase 3 is something of a nonchalant thing. People are now still taking their cars to the streets. They want to go on the street because I don't think they want to beat or violate the MCO. It's because they got to go to work. They got to ensure that things are being done at work and ensure that food is going to be put on the table. So yeah, I understand their motivation. I also understand that when you do not comply to the MCO, there's bound to be positive cases moving forward. So let's hope that the day-to-day rate is at 1%. If the day-to-day rate is not at 1%, this graphic will show you how things can get bad really fast. So yes, bad note that Malaysia is achieving a lot of positives when it comes to controlling the COVID-19 positive cases, but we all have to be wary. This is not going to be static if we do not comply to the MCO. My only advice is please comply to the MCO. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk at length about Securities Commission's annual report 2019, which is of course being done for the first time via live streaming. That's coming up after this.